Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Dr. Primrose ZJBima and I post content about research, running and mindfulness. Today's video is going to be based on my reflections of 10 jobs that I worked on campus during my time at the University of Cape Town between 2012 and 2022. Now you might be wondering, why a whole decade and almost 10 jobs on campus? Well, that's mainly because most campus jobs are short-term, that is temporary, and I stayed at the university long because I was at that institution for my undergraduate studies, honors, master's, PhD, as well as postdoctoral research fellowship. So why I'm sharing this video is because sometimes people may wonder to say what opportunities are available on my campus. Of course, the University of Cape Town does not represent what is available on other campuses globally, but it gives you insights on the jobs that one can actually explore on campus. So if you haven't gone to university yet, or even if you're at a university, try and find out if there's similar jobs on your campus. And also, before I go any further, I just want to encourage you to say that always look out for opportunities off campus. This is one of the points that I'll address towards the end of this video. Right now, let's jump into my 10 experiences. So the first one I have here is Student Support Officer. This is a role that I occupied from 2013 up until 2017. So that's from my second year at the university as an undergraduate student up until I was in my master's program. So this job was advertised, I saw posters on campus, I applied, and the job entailed providing support services to students who approached then the discrimination and harassment officers at the university campus. Now, this job spoke to my interest because I was doing gender studies and I'm interested in policy advice and also finding ways to tackle challenges relating, for example, to gender-based violence. So I was definitely in the right place. The position also helped me to actually get skills training, for example, in mediation, because my support role also included being a mediator towards student conflicts. And those are skills I use generally in my life as well. I really enjoyed this job. The downfall was that there were so many student support officers, so the roster was almost always full. So I didn't get to fully immerse myself at the office except during vacation. So that's if I decided not to go back home during the holiday, or if I couldn't go back home for whatever reason during the holidays, then I could serve as a student support officer doing full day, that is 8-hour shifts. And it was very relevant, like I said, once again, to my gender studies major. It also helped me to gain skills. And although the money that I was earning from this particular job wasn't a lot in terms of the hourly income, it was more for the experience than anything else. And it also gave me the opportunity to get insights of what it means to manage a university campus when you have to provide support services to students experiencing bullying, racism, xenophobia, amongst other issues relating to harassment. Now, the second job I have here, I didn't actually end up working on the job. Dininghall monitor. So I was placed in residence from my very first year up until I did my honors, so the first 4 years of university. During my first year, there was a call for Dininghall monitors. I applied, got invited to the interview, passed the interviews, but then upon consideration of what the job would take out of me, I decided not to take the job. I, of course, consulted with family, particularly my father and my brother, and I found that it was in my best interest not to take up the role. It would require me to sit in the dining hall for like the full meal time. So let's say from 5 p.m. maybe until like 9 p.m. when you wrap up and do what needs to be done in terms of like checking out for the day. I have worked, I had worked in a restaurant before. So I was familiar with the whole thing of clocking in and clocking out, doing stock take, amongst other issues. So I felt that at the time, the job was not going to upskill me, right? I was not going to upgrade my skills. And because of the low pay also, I decided that I would rather spend those dining hall hours interacting, networking in the dining hall, or doing my own work, because it doesn't always require like 4 hours to sit in the dining hall and have meals and interact with people. It's a good one because if you're staying in residence, it's very convenient. You don't need to pay transport money. And I think it also helps you to gain new skills in terms of just like your time management, interacting with people as well. And then the third job, I was an orientation leader. Oh, love it. The very first people I remember from my interactions at the University of Cape Town were orientation leaders. These were sort of like ambassadors for the faculty, for the university, for the International Programs Office. And they help you by teaching you how to get around campus. They share with you insights from their student experiences. They lead your groups through, I think, what we called homerooms. So you're just having discussions with them. And literally by the time varsity started, I was super happy because my orientation leaders had done a great job. So this job is not easy to get. For example, within my faculty, I think they always needed 40 humanities faculty orientation leaders. 25 had to be new and 15 had to be returning. So basically, there'll be like almost 1,000 applications for 25 slots, right? When you're like a newbie. The first time I think I was invited for interviews, I didn't progress any further, but that did not deter me. So the next year, I then applied again. And voila, I got it. So past the interviews, after the interviews, they take you through weeks of training. I don't remember how long it is, but it's almost like the whole of the second semester. And afterwards, they check your end of your results. And if they're pleased with everything about your profile, you get in. One of the major challenges with getting this gig is that they prioritize diversity. I'm from Zimbabwe, and there's a lot of international students from Zimbabwe at the university. So, in addition to fighting for 25 slots, there was the reality that I was also fighting for probably 1 or 2 slots that required just one Zimbabwean. And I don't know how I made it, but I think I, shined through the training process. My results were obviously good, and I think it was my time having been rejected the previous year. So I was an orientation leader for the very first time in 2015. And then I also got to become a returning orientation leader in the next year. So remember the 15 slots I mentioned again. And it was an amazing job. I got to do what my orientation leaders had done for me. I also added my own insights from my university experience because I wanted to help bridge the gap between coming from high school to coming to a university campus, demystifying some myths to students, and also providing warnings regarding what it really means to become independent within a university environment. Also did a lot of campus tours, also did a lot of like dancing and entertaining and drama skits for the students because of course you need to have a wide range of information dissemination skills when you're communicating with people, particularly young people coming into university space. You don't want to bore them into thinking it's almost like being in a tutorial or a lecture. And I grew so much through that job in terms of being able to interact with groups of diverse people. That's people from different faculties, people from different fields of study within my own faculty, people from different countries, and also people with different points of view in general. And because orientation leaders are usually a bunch of like character strong people, super confident, super intellectual, amongst other things, you get to see what it means to be in an environment with supercharged people, and you learn a lot from them as well. And I hope that they also learned something from me. So this then drove me to my next role number 4. Having been an orientation leader 2015, 2016, I then applied to become an orientation trainer. So orientation trainers, I think it's about a group of between 8 to like 16 who train people that will then become orientation leaders from all the faculties at the university. And I was fortunate enough to be one of them. Loved it completely. Being on the other side in terms of providing training and giving people skills also helped me to gain accountability. And it also helped me to gain skills in supervising and also in leading and also in being part of a strategic planning team. Because, of course, when you're training people, you need to have everything set up in terms of your weekly workshops, in terms of the materials you need, and in terms of how you're going to be disseminating information and reviewing each and every session that is undertaken. This one is quite academic. Tutor. So in 2015, when I started my honors, I knew that honors students are considered as postgraduates within the South African university environment. And so I should be able to apply for, tutoring roles, right? However, at the time of applying, the university was still, fraught with all these challenges around race. And despite the fact that I had very high grades for the courses that I applied to tutor, I was not taken in. So what I then did was I decided to approach one of the course lecturers for a course I really wanted to tutor. Told her I'd gotten the best mark for this course during my second year, and I was trying to find out why I wasn't at least provided with the opportunity to tutor. And also, I had a background in providing mentorship within the faculty as well as the department. So I really wanted to know. And I think I was just like a fly in her ear, irritating. She just told the administrator to add me to the list of the tutors. So that was basically me shooting my shot and also questioning why my application was not received well, right? It is a right, I think, for people to actually question and get responses. And so that's how I became a tutor. I literally fought to get this job. This was 2015. Things moved so smoothly. I became a tutor throughout 2015, in 2016 again. And then what happened at some point was there are some courses I had wanted to tutor, but my grades in them were not necessarily high distinctions, although they were very high. So I did approach the course conveners in this instance, and one of them was like, well, I work with a teaching assistant to choose my tutors. So if my teaching assistant doesn't think you're strong enough, then I'm not going to choose you. There, I never won. So I'm also trying to demonstrate here that even though in the first instance when I tutored, I did approach the course convener, the lecturer of the course, sometimes that method doesn't always work. However, when I did come back to the university in 2019, my tutoring background helped me. And here's why. So the sixth role I'm going to talk about is teaching assistant. And wow, this I mainly got, I think, just in relation to God's grace. So teaching assistant is basically a person who coordinates all tutors on a course to help them in terms of like the training, giving them advice, monitoring them, and making sure that the tutorials they need to deliver to the wide range of students are done in a systematic manner and in line with the goals of the course convener or lecturer. And I got my first teaching assistant job because when I decided I was going back to the university for my PhD, went to my former department, I was just like, hi to the administrator. She remembered me. We spoke about me coming back for PhD. And she asked me what I was going to be doing in terms of work when I came back. And I was like, well, at this stage, I actually don't know. And she told the head of department that I was around. Head of department asked if we could meet. And then the head of department actually told me that if I wished to come back to the University of Cape Town, there was always a home for me within the particular department. So she was offering me a teaching assistant role. I was given 3 months to think about it. She said the job was mine, and if I didn't want it, well, it was okay with her. Now, teaching assistant, I think in my experience, the job could pay me at least 3 times more than what I would get as a tutor. I will not go into salaries today because I don't think that we are allowed to discuss like figures as they are. What I can say is that the money is not loans. So the money I'm talking about here is like literally in like 4 figures, like 4 digits at the time when you're a tutor per month in South African rands. So I became a teaching assistant because, a head of department trusted me, wanted me to be on their course. And I think that my reputation obviously preceded me. I had done well as a tutor. I had done well as a mentor. They knew about my work also being an orientation leader on campus. So everything was just a build up to becoming better. Also, the experience of having been a student support officer, I realized that a lot of academics always wanted me to work with them. So sometimes good word does spread fast. I was very fortunate that the good work that I did as a teaching assistant, as a tutor, as a student support officer, amongst other roles, gave me the opportunity to be invited by more course conveners, literally word of mouth. I became a teaching assistant for 4 courses during the course of my PhD up to the postdoctoral level. So I was a teaching assistant for a course on global governance to third-year students specializing in international relations. I was a teaching assistant for a course on gender and the politics of development, which was my favorite course during my undergraduate studies. Love it, love it, love it still. And I was a teaching assistant for a course on theories, politics, and action, which is a gender studies course. at the third year level, which is the final year of undergraduate studies. And I was also a teaching assistant for a course on Introduction to Politics, which is like the very first course that students who want to major in politics, international relations, public administration at the University of Cape Town enroll for. That was a mammoth task, but I really loved it because it set me up for a challenge. I went from being a teaching assistant for a range of like 100 to 250 students to being a teaching assistant for almost like 500 students. And obviously, I was managing more tutors. So when you're a teaching assistant, you're giving a set of tutors. So where I had been working with about 7 to 10 tutors in this instance, I had almost like, double the number. And we had so many groups to manage. And I still am excited about speaking about this role because I learned a lot about myself in terms of being able to manage a lot of students. Also, when I did my teaching assistant work, first it was pre-COVID, second was the shock of COVID, learning to administer hybrid learning, learning to administer facilities for students who could not learn online, making sure that materials get to them, making sure that the materials they return via post come through. And also it involved shifting from teaching in person to facilitating teaching online. And then there was also the new shift to the almost like post-COVID period and finding out ways of, making sure that students were able to adjust with the times. I really think that I gained a lot of career training in that particular regard, as well as just learning how to, go through different pressures. Initially, when you start a job, everything is set, you've got a plan, you're going to execute things in a particular way, but there's some shocks that come, like COVID-19 was a global emergency, and no one had imagined that the pandemic would go as far as it did in terms of like leading to different forms of adjustment. I also gained a lot because when I was a teaching assistant, I made the effort to attend all the lectures. You understand? If I was teaching a course, I attended the lectures, which is not even a requirement, but I was telling myself that if I'm going to lead a group of 10 to 25 people that will disseminate information to students or help them to break it down, it only makes sense if I sit in, listen to the current course convener and the lecturers taking the course and what they have to say. This was in addition, of course, to the meetings I needed to have with these lecturers to prepare students for classes, for exams, tests, you name it. So I find value in that. If you're going to be a teaching assistant, I encourage you to do so. Don't over-rely on the fact that you've done these courses before. Courses change, times change, and also the lecturers who take those particular courses change. And then it also helped that whenever someone was needed to step in, I was available. For example, for the global governance course, there's a time when a guest lecturer was not able to make it. I chipped in. I told my supervisor I could handle the topic. I had done my readings and I pitched to him my lecture slides and everything that I would disseminate to the students, and he was happy with it. When I was teaching gender studies courses, particularly during the COVID-19 shift, there were a lot of changes that required new people to step in. There were a lot of changes that required new people that could learn and quickly teach others on how to teach online using, for example, your narrated slides, using Zoom, Microsoft Teams, amongst other methods. And I managed to chip in as well. I managed to chip in as well in terms of redesigning curriculum. It was important for students to sort of like have topics they could relate to, like what does it mean to be a gendered being living within the COVID-19 times? What is the socioeconomic impact of that? Because the course on global governance, if we didn't have an immense focus on the World Health Organization, how do we redesign the course in good time so that students can be able to actually write and comment on what is happening in the world, in their communities, and their perspectives on the initiatives that were being taken, whether by the African Union, the UN, as well as the World Health Organization, to mitigate challenges associated with the pandemic. So really, I also learned that one needs to be proactive, take initiative the whole time, and help course conveners, because yes, just because they're a professor doesn't mean they know everything and that they're good at strategy. So I think I really did well in terms of the real definition of a teaching assistant. Okay, now let me stray a bit away from academic jobs. Number 7, I was a library assistant. However, this was a short stint because I got the job at the beginning of 2020 only worked it for about 3 months before we had to just go away because the library facilities were not set up to be convenient during the first lockdown of COVID-19. So I lost that job literally like soon after starting it. However, I like the fact that for years, listen, between 2013 and 2017, I think I applied to become a library assistant and I never even got shortlisted for interviews. But eventually in 2019, I was shortlisted and I was then, trained after the interviews to become a postgraduate research wing library assistant. Really enjoyed helping students to navigate the library spaces. And it's a very chill job because you can do your own work whilst you're at at this desk, as a library assistant. So I really wish it's a job I had gotten earlier. Unfortunately, I didn't. And also when I did get it, COVID hit. So I don't have much to say from that experience, but if there's any job I would urge anyone to go for, it's such library assistant. And it also helps you to now, become more studious because just facing people that are working so hard should have that effect on you. But, we experience people differently. And then job number 8, career services assistant. Highly coveted. One of the jobs I had always wanted to get. I think I also applied probably twice before and never got shortlisted. But in 2019, I got shortlisted for the interviews, passed them, and then I got an offer for career services and library, and I had to choose one because career services and library are jobs you work throughout the whole year. So I couldn't do the whole thing of stints, which you do with, for example, if you're a tutor, you just go tutor for 2 hours, then you can go become a student support officer for like 2 hours in a day or something like that. So I chose the library instead because I wanted to focus on my academics. That means that I had to forego the opportunity to learn what it means to be in a career services center, helping students to write up their CVs, cover letters, and to give them career advice. I have no regrets in terms of the choice that I picked. The only regret I had was that the career services continued with their work. So if I'd become a career services consultant, I was going to have an income from that job during COVID. But with a library job, literally our contracts were terminated and we didn't earn anything thereafter. Now, job number 9, registration/curriculum advisor. Loved it, loved it, loved it. So all that one needed to actually be a curriculum advisor within the Faculty of Humanities at UCT is you have to be a PhD student, ideally someone who has been at UCT over the years and is familiar with the faculty registration processes. By virtue of you having been a student at the university, you would have had this experience. It's just that you're moving to the side of the table where you're actually giving students advice on how they can choose their majors, looking at the requirements and making sure they've met them. It's also a process that allows you to help students who've been struggling in terms of how they can better structure their forthcoming year and how to rearrange their majors. So I worked this job 2020, 2021, 2022. There was no interview whatsoever. I gained from having been a tutor, having been a mentor, and having been a student at UCT before. And I also benefited because I had been an orientation leader. So as much as like I was older now, I couldn't be dancing around on campus, jumping and jiving, inviting students to campus. I could help them as a curriculum advisor. You literally interface with hundreds of students, first years, hopefuls, second years, third years, you name it. So I really enjoyed this particular role. I wish it's something like I can do if I become a full-time academic because some of the curriculum advisors are actually lecturers at the university. So number 10, the big one. Lovely. Lecturer. So when it comes to lecturing, I started off as a guest lecturer. 2019, 2020, like I mentioned earlier, when I was teaching assistant, I volunteered to step in when required, right? When I saw that I could actually add my value to readjusting the course, I could actually add my value in terms of standing in for someone who can't make it to teach the students, right? To keep the flow of the courses. So I was invited to guest lecture during COVID-19 because I was pushing the agenda that students need to inculcate content relating to the pandemic into their curricula. And so I was a guest lecturer on the course for global governance, on the course for gender and the politics development. And what then happened later on was that I got the opportunity to teach them as whole courses. So being given the whole course that you taught like for 1 or 2 weeks to be like, be the course convener, you have the liberty to design the course in terms of what students are going to learn throughout the semester, the liberty to determine what their assignments are going to look like, the liberty to determine, the marking rubric, amongst other factors. So I would say that guest lecturing, whether just volunteering once or twice, and also just showing up as a teaching assistant or tutor, can actually help you because you give academics a preview of what you're able to offer. And heads of department are more likely then to feel confident in giving you those particular roles. Because trust me, giving someone who is still a PhD student a whole class of like 400 to teach, if anything happens or if they are breaking down in their academic journey, it might be disastrous for the whole course. Thankfully, I think for the most part, things moved smoothly for me. So in addition to global governance and gender and the politics of development, which I had been a tutor as well as teaching assistant for, I was given a postgraduate course that I lectured on transnational feminisms. This was the perfect course ever because it helped me to marry my interests in politics, international relations, and gender studies. And then I enjoyed teaching in full mode because it gave me a greater sense of responsibility. It gave me a greater sense of accomplishment. But then I quickly realized that as time goes on, there is the frustration of the returns on your investment. So if you're a guest lecturer or if you're given a full course, but then you are a replacement for someone who's on leave, it's difficult because you're not earning as much as you should, but the stresses you experience as a lecturer are similar to that person who's on leave, who would be getting paid, for example, like 3 times more than you are getting. So you're going to need therapy, you're going to need to maybe order food instead of cooking often. There's so many challenges, right? Your transport costs are going to increase, and yet you are being paid the bare minimum for actually lecturing, even if it's more than a teaching assistant. So one thing that I've promised myself is that if a lecturing role is available, I need to assess the income versus the demands. And that's the only way that I can continue in a lecturing position. It is difficult, I must admit, for people to get what we call full tenure track position. That is a full-time permanent role at a university to teach. It is so much easier to get jobs as a guest lecturer or as what we call ad hoc appointments, where you are basically a freelance lecturer. Still teaching the same, demands are the same in terms of marking, in terms of your management of the courses and whatnot. I'm not going to bore you with the politics of lecturing, but essentially those are the 10 roles that I engaged in. I think I should do a reread of them. Number 1, student support officer. Number 2, Dininghall monitor. Number 3, orientation leader. Number 4, orientation trainer. Number 5, tutor. Number 6, teaching assistant. Number 7, library assistant. Number 8, career services consultant. Number 9, registration and curriculum advisor. Number 10, lecturer. Okay, so before I end this video, I want to share that I have received rejections. I spoke about how I probably applied to be a library assistant maybe like 3 times before eventually getting invited. I think I also applied to be a career services consultant for like 2 times and was never invited to an interview. I did apply to be a receptionist at residence, never got invited for interviews. I did apply to be a lab assistant for computer laboratories. I never got shortlisted or invited to an interview, but those are jobs I feel like are really important because, for example, with the lab assistant, you can still do your own work, and more often than not, students don't even require much from you when you're working in a computer lab. Receptionist is great, depending on where you're a receptionist. I feel like in residence, it's super busy, but remember the times are stipulated, so you're not working there for long, and you can use that as a break from your studies. You can also even take your books into the receptionist study room, but you need to remember to be observant because, the role requires you, of course, to be observant. Those jobs also teach you to interface with people, provide solutions, because I mean, people are struggling in the computer lab. Maybe it's with printing or with connectivity or something relating to their computer. If it's at the reception, students come, call you. Sometimes you've got people's visitors that need to be attended to, amongst other issues. Also, I never saw any research assistant jobs advertised, but all of a sudden now I do see them from time to time. You can be a research assistant depending on which faculty you're in. You could do this as a lab assistant. You can do this as a writing assistant. You can also do this as a collaborator with your supervisors. So I think sometimes if you don't know whether they're available or not, ask your department, ask your faculty. If you're a postgrad, ask your supervisor if there's any research assistant work that's available, and make sure that it's paid, because I mean, you're trying to earn skills, you're trying to show up, but also you're also trying to earn money to actually continue to survive. And then I think that it's important to join on-campus organizations and societies. I was part of the United Nations Association of South Africa for about 3 years, and I got to serve as head academic chair towards the end of my undergraduate studies, which was amazing because I was partly responsible for organizing a Model United Nations conference for different universities, managing to recruit academic chairs for the conference, training them, making sure things are flowing, smoothly throughout the conference. So there's a lot of experience you can actually gain from being part of a society. I think it's best when you join a society that serves your interests. So is it an investment society? If you're more interested in international relations like me, is it the United Nations Association Society at the particular university, amongst others? I know other people, for example, who are into teaching, join societies that help them to do community outreach where they provide tutoring services. People that are part of like the Green Campus Initiative do a lot of environmental sustainability work. So there's a lot that you can gain from those opportunities. Of course, they do not pay, but I feel like in terms of upskilling you, a lot happens. And if you're given a leadership role, the better, because I mean, you're gaining experience in managing different people and also working in strategy teams. So don't just aim for on-campus jobs. I think for me, it was a source of comfort to work on campus because I didn't have money to pay for transport to go elsewhere in case I had gotten an unpaid internship. So if possible, if there's a budget for it, go for unpaid internships in non-governmental organizations. Go for unpaid internships, whether in the banking sector, whatever sector caters to your interests. I believe that those can be helpful. I did do one unpaid internship after my master's. It was at a refugee protection unit, which was part of my interest at the time because I had focused in my master's on migration management. I can tell you that the experience I got from that was wholesome. And I had to work 9 to 5 unpaid for a period of months. It's not easy. Knowing that I have the qualifications, chilling with people that are getting paid for them to do less work than I'm doing because I'm the intern here, I'm the volunteer here. But my boss was amazing. She took me almost everywhere to meetings with people from a wide range of organizations that I can't name drop. And I feel that even though I didn't get a job placement at that particular place later on, that helped to launch me into my career. The paid work I got thereafter was based on my experience there. And I could say that outside academic work, I have also worked in an NGO. Also, that NGO was based in a faith-based institution. So I could also speak about how I've done community development work, working with a faith-based charity. So that's all I'm going to say for today. I hope that you're inspired by the insights that I had to share. We've got other ideas about the jobs that students can do when they are learning, whether they're doing their undergraduate or postgraduate studies. Feel free to put them down below. I feel like now that I'm thinking about it, there's a lot of things I've also done to try and get money. I have been a transcriber. So when people have meetings or research recordings, they wanted to be transcribed. Basically, I'm listening to it, typing down what's happening, summarizing. I've gotten those jobs as well. But I was working as a freelance, like I was self-employed. Me becoming an editor, looking at people's work, editing their language, editing the structure of their papers, their thesis, amongst others. So opportunities are there, just that you're not really aware of them. And I don't think there's spaces at the university from the beginning, like till the end, where there's someone checking in and saying, what are you doing, what roles are you part of, and what is it doing for your career. Actually, it doesn't happen like that. I have the gift of hindsight now, and I hope that you're going to benefit from that. But also just ask around and check out what other people are doing. And, limitless opportunities, particularly if you're living in a city like Cape Town. I know some people might put up the argument that where their university is situated, there could be more limited opportunities. I wish you all the best if you're still a student. And please, to everyone who's watched, recommend this channel to more people. We need more subscribers and we need more people to gain insights and information that is relevant to them. Thank you to everyone who's been part of my journey thus far. I highly appreciate you. This is probably my last sit down video in 2023. I've promised content about research running and mindfulness, so it's time for me to create those running and mindfulness vlogs. Thank you for watching this one. I'll see you in the next one.